Hey everyone, my name is Mira Scarlett, and today I'm going to show you how to use a sewing machine, from properly threading it to sewing your first stitches. I'm going to be demonstrating this using the Brother LB5000M machine. If you're an absolute beginner to sewing and you struggle understanding how to get your machine ready to go, then this video should do the trick. So let's begin. Alright, so first things first, you'll need to power on your machine. Plug the power cord into the supply jack on the right side of the machine. Avoid using extension cords or plugging it into multi-plug adapters with other appliances. You can go ahead and plug in your foot control if you'd like as well, but for the moment it isn't totally necessary. Turn on your machine. It will adjust slightly when you tap the initial screensaver, so don't be alarmed. Alrighty, so the first step of threading the machine is needing to wind and install your bobbin. To start this, grab the color and type of spool you want to use and slide it onto the spool pin with the thread coming towards you from the bottom. It needs to be installed this way in order to prevent the thread from potentially becoming tangled around the spool pin. Then grab your spool cap. These come in multiple sizes so that it can properly fit whatever type of spool you've chosen. The spool cap helps keep your spool in place while it gets fed through the machine. It also prevents the thread from getting caught in the notch on most spools, which has the potential to break your thread or even break your needle. Now that your spool is properly in place, take the thread and pass it under the metal thread guide until it snaps in. Then bring it under the plastic thread guide cover. From there, you will pass the thread under the hook of the bobbin winding guide. Then wind it counterclockwise around the pre-tension disc, pulling it in as far as possible. Now it's time to grab your bobbin. Only use bobbins that come with the machine or bobbins of the same type. Using the wrong bobbin for your machine will mess up the tension and may even cause damage to the machine itself. To get your bobbin ready for winding, you can either wind the thread around the bobbin a few times clockwise, or you can feed the thread through the top hole of your bobbin. For this demonstration, I am sticking with the operation manual instructions of just winding the thread around 4 to 5 times clockwise. Now, place it onto the shaft spring until it clicks into place. Take the end of the thread you wound around the bobbin and use the built-in cutter to trim it. Slide the bobbin winder shaft to the right until it snaps into place. This will disengage the needle and cause the start-stop button light to change to orange, which you can then press to start the bobbin winding process. You can adjust the speed of the bobbin winding by sliding the controller to the left to decrease the speed or to the right to increase it, or just leave it in the middle to be neutral. Now we just wait for it to do its thing. It doesn't take long, but you will know when the bobbin is done when the bobbin winding begins to slow down. Press the start-stop button again, or if you're using the foot controller, simply remove your foot. Slide the bobbin winder shaft to the left until it snaps into place. Remove the bobbin and cut the thread. Now it's loaded up and ready to be installed. Before you begin installing your bobbin, make sure that your needle and your presser foot are raised. To avoid any safety hazards, press the lock button, which will lock all keys and operation buttons. Remove the bobbin cover by sliding the latch to the right. Insert the bobbin into the case so that the thread unwinds to the left. Lightly hold down the bobbin and guide the end of the thread around the tab of the needle plate cover. Then continue guiding it through the slit and finally end on the cutter. Now just replace the bobbin cover and that's it. If you need to make gathers or tie off a dart, you'll want to pull the bobbin thread up so you can leave the ends of the thread long rather than cutting them. I will explain how to do this once we have threaded the upper thread, which we will begin doing now. To thread the top of the machine, we will begin the same way we did with winding the bobbin. Slide the spool onto the spool pin so that the thread unwinds to the front from the bottom, Then put on the spool cap. Pass the thread under the metal guide and continue guiding the thread under the plastic guide cover into the front. Then you're going to follow the guidelines on the machine and pass the thread through thread channels 2 and 3. For step 4, make sure the thread is passed into the take-up lever.
This little guy right here.
Then pull down through 5. Slide the thread behind the needle bar labeled with a 6 on the left side. This will help stabilize the thread. The last step is threading the needle. You can use the needle threader or simply insert thread through the eye of the needle from front to back. To use the needle threader, all you need to do is feed your thread under this groove, then into this slot labeled with a 7 until you hear a small click. On the left side of your machine is a lever labeled with a 9, and all you have to do is pull that down and the magic happens. Now you can easily pull the thread through, then pass the extra tail end of the thread under the presser foot and towards the back of the machine. Now the upper threading is complete. At this point you can begin sewing, or if you need to pull up your bobbin thread, you can do that now. In order to pull up your bobbin thread, you will need to insert the bobbin into the bobbin case the same way as before, but this time, instead of guiding it to the end to be cut, you will pull the tail end towards the back of the machine and put the cover back on. While gently holding the upper thread off to the side with your left hand, turn the hand wheel towards you for one full rotation, or press the needle position button twice. Carefully pull the upper thread upwards to pull out the end of the bobbin thread, which comes up as a loop. Pull up the loop and pass it under the presser foot and pull it about 4 to 5 inches towards the back of the machine, making it even with the upper thread. Threading a sewing machine can seem daunting at first, but once you get used to it, you'll be able to thread your machine very, very quickly. Now that your machine is properly threaded, let's quickly go over how to begin actually sewing on it. It's time to sew your first stitches. The first thing that you're going to do is select your stitch type. To keep it simple, we will only be using stitches from the first 2 pages of utility stitches, which all use the default presser foot already attached to the machine. You can change your stitch and adjust the width and length of your stitches, but for this basic demonstration, leaving the settings as is should be just fine. Now it's time to grab the fabric. To sew a proper seam, start by putting your fabric pieces right sides together. Set the fabric under the presser foot. Line up the fabric with notches on the machine to allow for proper seam allowance. My go-to seam allowance is usually 5/8 of an inch, since that's what most commercial patterns call for. Lower the presser foot lever. Hold fabric and thread with your left hand and rotate hand wheel towards you, or press the needle position button to set the needle in the sewing start position. Use the controller to adjust your sewing speed. If you're a beginner and not used to the foot control, I suggest starting slow until you get used to it. Otherwise, it may go too fast for you and make sewing more difficult. When you begin sewing, at the beginning and the end of your stitches, you are going to be using a back stitch. That will keep the threads from unraveling at the ends and ensure that you have a nice, strong seam. Press the thread cutter button when finished. The needle will return to the up position automatically. Then you just need to lift the presser foot to release your fabric. If you need to keep your thread tails long or are using nylon monofilament or other decorative threads, avoid using the automatic thread cutter and instead lift the presser foot, raise the needle, and cut your threads on the left side of the machine or with a pair of scissors. If you need to do a simple gather, use a basting stitch and leave enough length at the end to pull the threads in order to create the gathering effect. The zigzag stitch is another great utility stitch to learn because if you don't have a serger, you can use it next to the raw edges on seam allowance to reduce fraying. It's also great for stretchy materials, but we will cover that more in depth in a later video. And there you have it, everything you need to get started sewing using the Brother LB5000M machine. You can also use this tutorial for getting started with the Brother SE400 machine, which is simply an older model and built in a similar way. This machine also has embroidery capabilities, which I do plan to go over in a future video. I hope this video was helpful and easy to understand so you can begin your sewing adventures. As a self-taught seamstress who learned most of what she knows from the internet, I hope to continue creating these videos to help guide you through the process and get you inspired to be creative. Let me know in the comments if there's anything else you would like me to cover in particular in another video. And yeah, until next time, bye!